What's up, people? I'm Eric Malachite. Welcome to Story Rant. And today I want to talk about why D&D, and specifically why tabletop RPGs are magic. No, I'm not talking about the spells or the feats or the amazing superheroic things that your characters can do in the game, but rather the imaginative superpowers that tabletop RPGs unlock for you. You know, as writers, it's really important for us to have a well-developed imagination. And it's probably no secret in the speculative fiction community that D&D, or tabletop RPGs as they're known, is a powerful tool for experimenting and exercising those mental muscles, so to speak. So, what is today's video about? Well, it's a couple of things. Originally, I was not going to make this the first video. I was going to talk about it eventually, but something popped up in my news feed, brought to my attention by my wife, about the current state of Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards of the Coast's plans to update the old OGL, otherwise known as the Open Game License, version 1.0a. Now, I'm not going to rehash too much about this, but we do kind of need to go over it for those who are unfamiliar or unaware of what's going on in the tabletop role-playing space, or industry as a whole. So, Wizards and Hasbro plan to update the OGL with a much more restrictive open game license, which really isn't that open. Now, other much larger channels devoted to this subject have gone over this in detail and are going to do a better job than me. But long story short, the bigwigs at Hasbro want you to pay more money for their product. But more than that, they want to go after people who make third-party apps, such as character generators, virtual tabletops like Roll20, and so on and so forth. They don't want you using a third-party app to play their games, or anyone else's games for that matter. Most of these apps, most of these virtual tabletops, have been developed with the old OGL. This is very bad, because if Hasbro does indeed go through with this could put companies like Roll20 and many of your favorite apps on the store, those character generators, those unofficial character sheets, in legal hot water. But this is really just a symptom of Hasbro's current outlook, at least their investors. This is not a decision made by the creatives behind D&D or 1D&D, or, let's call it what it is, D&D 6th edition. They believe that D&D is under-monetized. So, case in point, they purchased a website and app called D&D Beyond for a whopping $146.3 million, with plans to unlock the kind of recurrent spending you see in video games, i.e. microtransactions. Now, if you're going, oh, please don't do this to my D&D, I don't blame you. This is an awful turn of events, and frankly, one of the reasons why I play D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Cyberpunk Red, all these wonderful tabletop games, is because they're not video games. They have strengths that exceed what video games can offer me, namely that of what they do for my imagination. And as a storyteller, that is invaluable. And it's something that you can't get with maps and tokens and things like that. And hell, that's not even the icing on the bullshit cake. They want to turn D&D Beyond into a VR or almost AR experience, or at least that's what all the trailers and hubbub seems to be about. A lot of people in the space are worried about this. Some aren't. Some think that this is the coolest thing ever, that finally you'll be able to video gameize your D&D campaigns. You'll be able to have a D&D campaign mapped out in an instant by some kind of weird chatbot or something. I don't know. One of the reasons why this is a bad idea comes down to theater of the mind. What is theater of the mind? Well, it's using your imagination while playing. It's not using maps or battle grids or tokens or any of that stuff that many GMs might feel adds to the experience. When you read a novel, when you read the prose and the words on the page, does it paint a picture in your mind, a movie, so to speak, of what's happening in the book? If it doesn't, you might be missing out on something, because a good book should do this. And a good D&D campaign, played through your imagination primarily, should also do this. You should be envisioning these worlds, these stories, as you're playing them. D&D and tabletop RPGs allow you to do things that video games simply can't. Even the most open world game that you can think of, Skyrim, or Cyberpunk 2077, or Fallout, they don't do this. You have a set number of options. You have a set number of roles or dialogue trees that you can follow. Even Fallout New Vegas has limits in the amount of roleplay that you can engage in, even though it's a fantastic role-playing game, and one of the few that actually constitutes a role-playing game. D&D and tabletop RPGs are about one thing: collaborative storytelling. The rules, the mechanics, and all that stuff, all that's there to facilitate an experience with a bunch of friends around a table or on Discord if you're in different parts of the world, to tell a story. And that is a powerful experience, something that you can't get with a video game. Sure, MMOs offer you ways to engage with your friends while you play together, but ask yourself this: while you're playing World of Warcraft or some other MMO, City of Heroes, are you actually inhabiting that role the way you would, describing your actions using funny voices, eating Funyuns and drinking Mountain Dew? As the GM describes a well-developed world, presents clues to you, and acts out the actions of the characters and enemies that you encounter? Is it the same as getting deep into these characters, into this scenario, this story that you yourself are helping to tell? I'd argue no. Even the most devoted MMO role-playing group probably won't reach the heights of the best Call of Cthulhu or D&D scenarios. I'll tell you one other reason why turning D&D into a microtransaction Fortnite-esque VR AR nightmare is a bad idea. And that's because people who first come to the hobby, if that is their first experience, if they're engaging in these colorful animations of characters and magical attacks and enemies on the playing field rather than their imaginations, then they're going to be missing out on a formative experience, something that no other form of storytelling can give them. And to illustrate my point, I'm going to tell you a story. Winding the clock back to sometime before the pandemic, my nephew was 8 or 9 years old, and I wanted to share D&D with him. This was going to be a simple scenario that involved a hero setting out to save somebody from a bunch of hags. That was it. I don't know why I chose hags, I just did. It was going to be heavy on combat, but there was also going to be a companion character that he could interact with too, because his friends couldn't play. When I showed my nephew all of the different D&D races that he could choose from, he chose the Dragonborn. Because, let's be honest, being a dragon person is pretty awesome. He also decided that Dragon was his name, and that he was 8 or 9 years old, however old he was at the time that I shared the game with him, and that his parents died tragically like Batman's. Dragon was also 9 feet tall for some reason. Don't ask why. As we played and I explained how the game works in and out of combat, all of his options and whatnot, his eyes lit up. They went wide with wonder as he realized that not only could he kill the creatures that were attacking him, but he could do other things too. He could interact with this world in a way that he wouldn't be able to do in a video game. Long story short, we got to the end of this short scenario, and everyone almost died. But the experience was so formative for him that he wouldn't stop asking to play D&D anytime he came over. So I always make an effort to try to have something D&D or tabletop related for him to do whenever I see him, if there's an opportunity. Introducing a kid to D&D is a big, formative event, if it's done right, at least. I did not get that as a kid. I didn't play my first D&D session until college. And despite that, it was a big deal to me. Yeah, we were using maps and battle tokens, and I hated 4th edition D&D with a passion. Don't get me started on that. But it led to me making my own rule sets and exploring other systems like GURPS and Call of Cthulhu and Mutants and Masterminds and all sorts of other stuff like Cyberpunk Red, Cyberpunk 2020. One thing that GMing, DMing, being a keeper, if you want to go with Call of Cthulhu's terminology, has done for me. It's made me extremely good at improvising. Now, sometimes I fall on my face. Sure, every DM does. The point is, the tools that I've gotten from playing and both running tabletop RPGs have been influential in my ability to improvise, to use and stretch my imagination to the limit, to imagine these movies in my head with these people that I'm on a journey with. And I think if future generations are only able to interact with D&D and tabletop RPGs like it's a video game, it's going to limit their ability moving forward with exploring their imagination, with developing this essential tool in our mind to imagine worlds, to build things. And I think that storytelling as a whole will be lesser for it. You know, writers, artists, creatives, we understand the value of creating something from nothing, how we can take a blank canvas or page and turn that into something of value. But the executives that run companies like Hasbro, they don't understand that. They don't know the value in that. They don't know what they're taking from you. And like all the other corporations on Earth, they don't care. All they care about is how to monetize you. I think Wizards is performing a disservice to all of the kids out there that don't know what they're missing, that haven't experienced that magical moment when they realize they can do anything. If they want, against the DM's wishes, they can run off into the forest and just go to the next town, buy some cake, or, you know, probably murder hobo a little bit. You can't judge. We've all been there, buddy. We've all wanted to stab the shopkeeper. You shouldn't do it. That's a bad idea. I guess the point of this is that I won't be supporting D&D or Wizards of the Coast going forward if they choose to go through with this. Even if they don't update the OGL, I'm still not going to support them. Because D&D Beyond will be a step too far in my opinion. I think that's all I've got for you right now. What do you think as a storyteller? Or as a reader? Or a player in D&D? Do you agree with me? Do you think that adding so many graphics and lighting effects to the experience robs you of a certain level of imagination in your D&D scenarios? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to hear from you. Let's start a conversation, as always. I look forward to creating more videos. The next 2 videos that are coming out after this, I'm not going to look quite as pretty because I was recovering from COVID. Yeah, so in those videos, I kind of look like I was trying to fight a steamroller downhill with my hands tied behind my back, but I hope you enjoy the videos nonetheless. I'm Eric Malachite. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time, Space Cowboy.